Relax. I'm disappointed too. I understand why you're upset, but there's still a lot of football left to be played. The Jets season is nowhere close to being over. Let's talk about what the Jets season opening loss to the 49ers really means today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen or first watch every day. Subscribe to the show for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you'll get new episodes as soon as they're posted. If you enjoy the show and are listening on the podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. We are here to recap the Jets season opener. It was not a good one. The Jets lost to the San Francisco 49ers last night on Monday Night Football. The final score was 32-19. And even that maybe undersells how dominant the 49ers were because the Jets scored a touchdown with their backup offense in garbage time late in the fourth quarter. It was a thorough domination by the San Francisco 49ers. And the Jets fan base today is understandably upset, understandably frustrated, understandably, kind of freaking out. I think it's important to keep things in perspective. So let's try and put what happened last night into a broader context. And look, I get it. I'm upset too. I was hoping the Jets would come out and play a much stronger game. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat what happened last night. I'm not going to tell you anything other than the truth, which is that the Jets played a miserable game. They played a miserable game on offense. They played a miserable game on defense. And there are some things to be concerned about coming out of that game. But the season's not over. The season's not even close to being over. There's still 16 games left. This is a week we somewhat jokingly, but not entirely jokingly, refer to in the NFL as overreaction week. And it's easy enough to see why people overreact. It's been a long offseason. The last real game the Jets played was back in January. It was that, less than entertaining Week 18 game in New England in the snow when the Jets beat a really lousy Patriots team. And we've been waiting ever since then to see real Jets football. Yeah, we had the offseason, we had the free agent signings, we had the draft, we had training camp, we had the exhibition season, but these were the real games. This is when it started. That last night was when they start playing for keeps. And there's all this anticipation, months and months of anticipation. And then to get a start like that, it's tough when you're a fan. It happens to about half the teams in the league. Only 16 of the 32 teams win week one. All 32 teams' fan bases think that they're going to win heading into the season, heading into their first game. Only half of them do. And I think there's more to it with the Jets because this season has been so anticipated. The return of Aaron Rodgers, some of the big moves they made in the offseason. There was a lot of optimism heading into this game. Look, I was optimistic. I thought the Jets would play a good game. I was hoping that they would be able to find a way to pull it out. I thought they'd at least be competitive, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, and they really weren't. It was a really, really lousy performance. But it is only one of 17 games. And I think it's important to keep that in perspective. I think another aspect of this is that, we finally have a data point after waiting, 8-9 months to just actually have something to analyze, some real football to analyze. Now we have it. And 100% of the data points are focused on that game. We get to October, we'll have 6-7 games that we can, and that'll give us a much better sense of where the New York Jets are as a team. Sometimes one game can be deceiving. When the Patriots won their 6 Super Bowls under Bill Belichick with Tom Brady, 3 of those years, they lost week 1. They had a couple games where they got absolutely blown out week 1. When Brady won his Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, they lost week 1 to New Orleans. Last year, Kansas City lost week 1. The Chiefs, who went on to win the Super Bowl, lost. 2021, 3 years ago, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers lost 38-3 in New Orleans. Rodgers had a really lousy game. Green Bay went on to win 13 games that year, had the 1 seed, and Rodgers ended up winning the MVP. It's only one game. There are 17 to be played. Now, that's not to say that this game is irrelevant. It is one of 17 games, but I've mentioned this frequently on the show that I think you should look at the season. This is true in many contexts. I talk about it frequently when we're discussing evaluating players, how players are potentially improving, guys who could be breakout guys. I think you should view it kind of in the context that it's a long novel. And last night was chapter 1. That does not mean it's the whole book. There are teams every year that play really lousy first games that go on to have very successful seasons. There are teams that play great first games that go on to have really lousy seasons. We know a thing or two about that. We've seen some of these with the Jets, some standout week 1 performances by the New York Jets. And otherwise lost seasons. I don't know if last year counts because, you even in winning that game, that thriller against Buffalo week 1, you knew that you lost your quarterback. But 2018, Sam Darnold's first game, Jets go into Detroit and absolutely crush the Lions. Jets end up having a pretty unsuccessful season. The head coach gets fired after the year. 2012, Mark Sanchez has a huge game against Buffalo. Stephen Hill has a huge game against Buffalo. That season didn't go really well for anybody. Jets had a lousy season. Sanchez never approached that level of play again. Neither did Stephen Hill. Week 1 produces some fluky results. And yes, it's true. I did say that heading into this game that if you're going to catch San Francisco at any point in the schedule, week 1 might be ideal because you're just working new guys into your system. San Francisco had some guys hold out. I mentioned yesterday that if the game was close going to the fourth quarter, and quite frankly, I thought it would be close going to the fourth quarter. I was wrong on that maybe the Jets would have an advantage with Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, missing so much time in training camp, with Christian McCaffrey status unclear, and McCaffrey ended up not playing. But you know what? At the end of the day, it did not work out for the Jets. But I'm gonna throw out an earlier prognostication I had. When did the schedule come out? Like 4 months ago. For about 4 months, I've said over and over that part of the reason week 1 is a good week to get San Francisco is that nobody's really expecting the Jets to win. This Jets team heading into the season, if you looked at the odds before games, Jets are favored, at least at this point, in most of the games that they have going forward. This is one of the few games where the Jets were a legitimate underdog. So, first of all, nobody was really banking on this being a win for the Jets. It would be a nice to have, as I mentioned yesterday. If the Jets won this game, they'd be well on their way to an excellent start to their season. This could be that's the kind of thing that could set them up for a big season. But I think everybody thought that it was going to be a tough road to climb, a tough hill to climb. I mean, look, unless you were like the biggest Jets fan who could see no possible way this could go wrong, you had to know that there was a scenario where the Jets would not be super competitive. San Francisco is an excellent football team. The 49ers were a play away multiple times last year from winning the Super Bowl. And you had to know that, look, this is maybe the toughest test the Jets have on their schedule this year. They got it out of the way week 1. But we said for 4 months that, if the Jets win week 1, it's great. But if they lose week 1, it's not the end of the world because the next couple of games on paper are not as daunting. And of course, games aren't played on paper. New England won week 1, they're your opponent week 3. But it's like everybody agreed with me for 4 months. And now like one game, after 3.5 hours of football, people are disagreeing. It's like we said this for 4 months that, week 1's not a must win for the Jets. And now that they've lost, and I understand part of it's the way they looked really lousy, but nothing has changed. There's still a very good chance 10 days from now, we'll be sitting here and the Jets will be 2-1. And look, this is week 2, I think, is an important game for the Jets because, part of this calculus was assuming they're going to beat the Titans, they're going to beat the Patriots. But, if 10 days from now, the Jets are 2-1, I think this will be a distant memory. I don't think this was the game that really, and it's your season is never over week 1. You should never panic over week 1 results. You take it as it comes. Look, you don't overreact any more than you would overreact to any other game. It's 1 of 17. You don't underreact either. You can't say no. There were no takeaways from this game. There were some things that leave me a little worried. And here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we're going to turn our attention to what should be the dominant side of the ball for the Jets. So that's the defense. But defense did not deliver. And I think some of it you can blame on week 1, but some of it could be more lingering issues. And we'll talk about that continuing here on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Hims. No man wants to lose his hair, but for men, it's actually very common. And now with Hims, the solution is simple. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions, and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who got their flow back. Hims provides access to a range of hair loss treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. They offer personalized, chewable oral spray and serum treatment options, so you can find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online. Just answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to your door. And Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. So if you feel like you're losing part of yourself to your hair loss, get Hims and get your confidence back. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedonnfl. That's HIMS.com/lockedonnfl for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/lockedonnfl. Results vary. Based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil, prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. We're recapping a Jets loss. As you know, the Jets lost to the San Francisco 49ers 32-19. And even that, I think, undersells the domination of the 49ers because the Jets did have a cosmetic touchdown late in the fourth quarter with their backup offense. But the defense is supposed to be the dominant unit of this team. And it was really a no-show from the defense last night. I mean, they got a quick 3-and-out in the first series. The 49ers took the knee at the end of the game in the fourth quarter to run out the clock. Every other possession, the 49ers scored. Now, there were some times where the Jets offense left the defense with a short field, either through a turnover or not picking up a fourth down. But still, I don't think anybody could be happy with that defensive performance by the Jets. And I think the first place you got to look is the defensive line. And I don't think that game necessarily changes the Jets' calculus on Hassan Reddick. They're in this standoff. The question is, if ever, is Reddick going to report? And a lot of people, including me, we're watching this game to try and figure out whether it changes anybody's opinions. Because if the Jets go out there, if Jets have gone out there and sacked Brock Purdy 5 times, they'd probably be feeling pretty comfortable with what they have. Well, I think if the goal was to make the team feel like it did not need Hassan Reddick, that failed because Jets only had 2 sacks in this game, and both of them were from guys in the secondary who kind of just touched Brock Purdy down when he went down behind the line of scrimmage. The defensive line did not record a sack, and there was only 1 quarterback hit. It was registered by Quinnen Williams. So, this was not a very encouraging performance by the defensive line. I don't think it necessarily changes how the Jets will approach Reddick because we knew going in this was going to be a tough game. Now, if the Jets go another couple weeks where their lines are really struggling to generate pressure, that could be the point where things change. But this might be the first step. We're trying to figure out who has the quote unquote leverage, which is, a word I hate using after the Aaron Rodgers trade, after, months and months of, do the Packers or the Jets have the leverage? I hate using the word leverage, but to the extent it matters, I mean, the Jets did not prove that they can go forward without Hassan Reddick and be successful last night. But I think an even bigger issue was the run defense. The Jets got gashed on the ground. The 49ers ran the ball 38 times for 180 yards. That's a 4.7 yard average. And as much as the focus will be on Hassan Reddick, and rightly so, there was another guy I thought the Jets missed last night, and that was John Franklin Myers. And I've been very, very vocal about this, both in my writing and in my podcasting, that I was concerned about how this Jets defense would respond without JFM, because while he's not the star, I think he played a very, very important role for the Jets the last couple of years. The back seven in the defense, the linebackers, the safeties, the corners is always true, but the Jets defensive coaches value speed there, which means you typically get smaller guys who struggle to shed blocks, who struggle with physicality. And adding a JFM as a defensive end in the system, that gives you a third 290-pound, 300-pound kind of guy. You already have your 2 defensive tackles, but you add a third guy who can play defensive end and play it effectively. It helps compensate for that because then you have extra bulk on the line. You don't need your linebackers to shed a ton of blocks because you have 3 big guys who can eat up blocks and allow the linebackers to just roam free in front of you, play sideline to sideline. And I don't know who plays that role for the Jets right now. And based on last night, it looks like nobody stepped into it. I mean, I've speculated maybe Michael Clemens could be the guy if the coaching staff likes him, but that was not a very good performance by the Jets, and that's an understatement. And it's not that like the Jets' run defense was great a year ago, but this was alarming. This was especially without Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it's one thing for McCaffrey to go from 180 on you. McCaffrey's out, and the Jets just lost this game in the trenches. That's really what it boils down to. I think they did not get pressure on Brock Purdy. They did not stop the run at all. They did not do a good job winning their assignments. I mean, the Jets were just manhandled up front. And yeah, I know the Jets entered this season with a reputation for having a really good defensive line, but a lot of the guys who contributed to that line are gone. And another guy who was supposed to fill the void is holding out. So I think, look, I'm not overstating this. I'm not saying the Jets season's over. I'm not even saying right now that this defensive line is definitively a weakness, but I think this defensive line has a lot to prove. And I'm not definitively saying it's a weakness, but I am saying it's a concern. You don't want to overreact to week 1. You don't want to participate in overreaction week. But there are takeaways you can have. And they match with some of the concerns I had with this defense, because I did not know how this defense would replace JFM. And watching that game, I felt like they missed JFM, and I don't want to relitigate this. I have no idea why they traded him because they got nothing in return, practically nothing. They claimed they needed to do it for cap reasons. There were other ways they could have handled it. This is troubling. Now, listen, you're not facing an offense as talented as San Francisco every single week, but still, you would have liked to have seen this much stronger performance. And the defensive line, which I think had a lot of questions going in, did nothing to answer them. I think the questions will persist over the next couple of weeks, and they will be one of the areas where I have my eye on the team. And then another thing is that the Jets, I don't think the Jets were very good in coverage, especially in their zone coverages last night. I think a lot of their basic zones, the defenders were not getting good depth on their drops. They were not reading the plays well. Some of their more complex zones, they were not communicating well. They were not passing guys off. They were not, making sure they were in the right place. And you look, this team made a big deal about how tough their training camp was. I know Rodgers was at the forefront of it, but you heard a lot from the Jets about how this was a grueling training camp, about how we're ready to go for week one. Well, if we're going to be fair, that team did not look ready to go. This coaching staff did not look like they had this team prepared. And part of it may have been that, they were just getting manhandled up front, but part of it was, again, they were busting coverages. They weren't, they were not making sure every guy was covered. There were guys who were running free in the defensive secondary. And really, it was just a lack of execution. And, I understand it's week one. I understand there are going to be hiccups, and some of this is natural. But on the other hand, again, the Jets made a big deal about our training camp was really tough this year. We're ready to go. We don't need to play our starters in the preseason. And, that's a whole other debate. And I don't know. Look, I don't know. I'm sure there are teams that played their starters in the preseason that still had a few hiccups in their secondary. That said, your job, whether or not you play your starters, no matter how grueling your training camp is, your team needs to be ready to play week one. And I don't think this team was ready to play on any level. And I could give them a pass if they looked good elsewhere. But I don't think there were many players who could come away from this game feeling like they played very well. And that's especially true on the offensive side of the ball. And it's especially true of a unit that was supposed to be much improved, but looked a lot like the 2023 vintage. Ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll talk about how the defensive line wasn't the only spot where the Jets lost in the trenches. That's ahead on this Tuesday episode. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, now we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And look, the Jets are not nationally televised week 2. They play against the Tennessee Titans. It's a Sunday afternoon game. Do you really want to have to depend on your local network to carry it if you're out of market? Or even if you're in New York, when the Jets don't play, do you really want to have to watch the Giants or whatever game Fox or CBS is showing to you? You can watch every game on YouTube and YouTube TV, and you can get YouTube a 3 free-week trial from YouTube TV of NFL Sunday Ticket with a $5 bet on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday, recapping what was frankly a very ugly start to the season for the New York Jets. The defense played a horrible game. Look, the offense also played a horrible game. I mean, the starters scored 13 points, and that's just not going to get it done. And I think the place you have to start with the blame is the offensive line. Because, look, I don't think there are many people who are going to come away from that game satisfied with their performance. There were lots of very poor performances by the Jets, and it was true at the skill positions. But once again, I mean, how many times have we talked about it through the years? In this Jets, this long era of frustrating Jets football where the offense can't do anything. Look, the quarterback gets the most of the blame, and in many cases, it's been accurate. Last night, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is the reason the Jets lost that game. I thought that he made a couple of really phenomenal throws, some throws that he's the only one that can make. Maybe there were a couple of other quarterbacks. I felt like there were moments where maybe he left a play or two on the field. From what I saw, the arm still looks pretty good. I don't think he's, I've been saying this for a while. I don't think he's going to be the dynamic guy outside the pocket he's been for much of his career. He's going to have to play for the pocket more. And that makes it even more essential for the offensive line to do its job up front. And on some level, again, kind of like with our defensive breakdowns, you expect it because you have 3 new starters on the offensive line, and really 4. If we go back to week 1 last year, Joe Tippmann was not a starter at the beginning of the season. So 4 new week 1 starters, guys who are not used to playing with each other. Even like Elijah Vera Tucker and Morgan Moses, who were teammates, they didn't play next to each other in 2021 because AVT was on the left side and Moses was on the right side. Now they're both on the right side playing next to each other. So they don't have a lot of experience, guys used to playing with each other. And you saw a lot of breakdowns when the 49ers ran stunts, when they ran twists. There were some pretty huge communication lapses for this team. And there were also just some missed assignments. And again, it's a balance because on one hand, it's week one. On one hand, you have a line that's learning how to play together. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a month or two before these guys are really comfortable playing with each other. And that's if you hope you have no injuries. On the other hand, you go back. Jets made a big deal that we're ready for the season. We don't need to play in the exhibition games. We're ready to go. It was a grueling training camp. So on some level, again, I can tolerate a certain number of mistakes, but I think you have to go back to the way the coaching staff prepared this team for this first game. And in many cases, week one, you see how well your coaching staff did prepare the team. I think not very well. And if there were not issues throughout the entire roster, if there were not issues on the offense and defense, I could give it a pass. If the defense played up to its capabilities last night and the offensive line was struggling, maybe I could say, all right, you know what, offensive line is going to take some time for them to gel. But the issues were all through the roster. After this Jets team told us over and over and over again about how prepared they were for the season. And that's, I guess if we're talking about takeaways, concerns from the game, because look, as I said, this season is not over, not by a long shot. There's a long way to go. But there are some concerns you can take away from the game. First among them is the defensive line. The second is, the team's total lack of preparation. There's no question the 49ers coaching staff had their team more ready to play in this game. And, what was good on offense, again, Rodgers hit some phenomenal throws. The connection looked really good with Garrett Wilson. Didn't look like there was much of a connection with anybody else. I mean, maybe Lazard after the game got out of hand in the second half. He made a couple of plays. Lazard kind of padded his. I mean, he made the plays. I shouldn't say he padded his stats, but there really aren't many good takeaways you can have on either side of the ball in this game. And I think I have this theory that I talk about it from time to time that every team's going to have like one or two games through the season where absolutely nothing goes right. And sometimes it happens week one. Some of the teams I mentioned, some of the teams that have won the Super Bowl have played miserable week one games. And there are also some games where it feels like nothing can go wrong. The Jets against the Texans last year. This awful Jets team against this Houston team that ended up winning its division. The Jets go out there and blow them out in the second half of that game. You hope for the Jets that this is one of those games where just nothing could go right. You hope this is not like a common occurrence. You hope what you saw last night was an aberration. Because this is a Jets team that has the potential to do good things. But not if they play like that. And I guess I come away from this game disappointed, obviously. But I come away from this game hoping that, 10 days from now, we'll be talking about the 2-1 Jets. That we won't be talking about this as an ongoing issue. Because this week 2 game against Tennessee becomes very important. One of the things we talked about in the 4 months leading up to this game, that, if the Jets lose week 1, it's okay. But that's contingent on the Jets now picking up their level of play. It's contingent on the Jets playing at a much higher level. It's contingent on the defensive line getting to the quarterback. It's contingent on the offensive line playing up to its capabilities and controlling the trenches. It's contingent on guys who are not Garrett Wilson stepping up on this offense. The Jets will show us in the weeks ahead whether that was just a one-off. And frequently, look, there are fluky results week 1 every year. Every year you look back on week 1 and you say, how did that happen? And you look at it, and the way some teams perform week 1 doesn't resemble at all what they do in the future. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes you dominate week 1 and stink the rest of the year. Sometimes you stink week one and dominate the rest of the year. Sometimes week 1 does tell us about a team. It's too early to say, though. So my recommendation to you is not to panic, not to assume the worst, but take the lessons from this game, because there are some things we can take and monitor the concerns. I'm not going to sit here and look, it's a game that counts. There are only 17 games that count every year. So put no more, no less than 1/17 of your schedule being completed, and put no more, no less emphasis on what happened in this game, because the stuff that happened did matter. It is, however, too early to say that the season's over. It's too early to draw sweeping conclusions about this Jets team. It's going to take more time than that. And hopefully we'll see this team bounce back against Tennessee this coming weekend. But that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Send in your mailbag questions. Tomorrow we'll have our weekly mailbag. Talk to you then.